the true miracle of this piece came in something that happened. Remember, this is 2003. Okay? What had been invented then? 2003. Okay? Blogging started in 2004. Just ending 2003, 2004, we started to blog one another. Able to talk in real time with each other. Okay? On the planet. So what happens? The writers write a piece of material. They give it to the production. The production, first of all, the writing is excellent. Really well thought through. Next, the production gets it and elevates it to another level. Incredible. Then what happens? The production, after they get done with it, all the acting, the set design, all of the costumes, everything that we did on production, sound, incredible. We give it to post-production. And post-production took it to a level that just shot it right through the roof with Bear McCreary and everybody and the music and the sound and the special effects. It was just elevated to a very high standard, and the bar was set very high. Then what happened? We released it, and the first time they ever saw it was in London. England saw the very first production of this before the United States got to. But guess what? As soon as it went on the air over there, somebody downloaded it. And immediately it was on the internet, and everybody got to see it. And guess what happened? Everybody started to blog. Within an hour and a half after the show was over, people were online blogging and finding how to talk to one another. And the blogs went out, people started connecting. And then thousands, then tens of thousands, then millions of people started to connect onto this blogging and talking. And what happened? The writers, Ron Moore, and all of the writers started to get online. And they went online. Well, okay, it started here, production elevated to here, post-production elevated to here. We put it out on the air, and then through the usage of internet and blogging, the people elevated it to a level that we couldn't even imagine. You guys started to comment on what you were thinking and what you were feeling that was being represented on this program. And the writers were going, oh, really? That's not bad. It's a pretty good idea. Yes, so yeah, yes, that's exactly what we meant. It's out there, it's free. Why don't we yes, and they took on the responsibility of taking into consideration the stuff that we were now as a mass, a total mass of people connected through the internet and took it to another level. And then that's where they started to write every time they were writing their next piece. So how could any show compare to this one? We'd never had that technology. We never had the ability of having the entire planet commenting and elevating it. And the stuff that made sense was used. And we were saying, yes, that's exactly what we meant. So yeah, this became pretty well, it was obvious from the conception that the reimagining of this piece and the fact that what he did as far as changing some of the things that were, the centerpieces of the original, and which caused people to go crazy. And that's when I came up with the ultimate line that everybody thought I was, doing this to get, publicity for it. And it was a truth. I don't know, I'm sure you all remember the memorable line that I said at the critics, what do you call that? When they put it out in front of the critics for the very first time, and then they get showing the show for the very first time. And there was about 400 critics from all over the world that came, and they were showing the different networks were showing their latest wares for the next season. And we're there, and that's when I came up and I said, if anybody is in love with the original show and you just adored that show, do not, under any circumstances, watch our show. It'll be harmful to your mental health. Because basically, just changing Starbuck to a woman was like, people threw up. The original original people who were diehard fans of, and there were millions and millions of them, could not, under any circumstance, take that. Just that one move, let alone to everything else that the guy did to the show. But basically, that's why I went on and I said, don't watch it. And they wanted shot heard around the world with the critics and all the press there. And I said, Edward James Olmos says, don't watch the show. And of course, what happens? Everybody watched it. As soon as you tell them, don't do that, they go, oh yeah, watch me. And so, next question. Go ahead.
It's fantastic that you were able to, in the show, kind of bring in all of these futuristic elements that weren't seen in Blade Runner, but I think the higher achievement was also being able to bring in a lot of the social problems that are constantly present with us, to the point that the show got so much attention that you guys were able to do a panel in the United Nations, you and Mary McDonald and Ron Moore. Can you tell us a little bit about the experience sitting before the committee?
Yeah, that probably was the most unbelievable moment in the history of television and what it represents. Because, to be the first television show to be asked to come and speak to the United Nations, the entire assembly, is, why are you asking a television show to come and speak at the United Nations? Have we really degenerated to that point? And knowing what they feel about television. So, but I have to tell you, they were right on the mark, because what they did is that they got every single aspect of our show that dealt with things that they were dealing with in the UN daily, like reconciliation. They were saying, if the Cylons and the human beings can come together after the total annihilation of the human species by the Cylons to help preserve humanity, then the Jew can come together with the Arab and the Muslim, and the Irish can come together with the English, and the Argentinians can come together with everybody. Think about it. They talked about reconciliation was the very first thing that started this whole thing off. And they showed about 7 minutes of a clip. And then the head of the executive director of each of the subject matters that we're dealing with, so the man who deals with nothing but reconciliation on the planet between all the countries. Okay, for the UN, the guy who tries to keep us all together, and can you imagine that job? Forget it. That's like, my God. He sat there and he spoke for 20 minutes about reconciliation and how the UN deals with it after setting it up off of a piece of work that was known by almost everyone. That said, in the process, he uses the word race as a cultural determinant. And how many of you saw what went on there? Did anybody lock in and see what happened that day? How many of you did not know that Battlestar was at the UN? Raise your hand. Okay. Battlestar went to the UN. And if you go online and you put down Battlestar at the United Nations, you'll get to see the whole 3.5 hours. Or you can take the 3 or 4 minutes that I talked about when I sat there and I realized what I had been dealt with after all these years of I'm 63 years old. I know I look good, but I am old. And with that in mind, I sat there and listened to the head of the UN executive director in charge of reconciliation of all of us on the planet, and he used the word race as a cultural determinant, just like all of you do every day. You think that there's a white race, you think that there's a black race, a brown race, a red race, a yellow race. You all do. Racial discrimination. One race against another. There's no such thing as an African race or a Caucasian race or a Latino race. There isn't. And you know it, you all know it, and yet you continue to use race as if it was correct. There's only one race, and you know it. What is it? So say we all. And yet you sit there bored or relaxed or contemplating what you're going to eat in a little bit or wondering, if you can ask your question. And it has just gone right through you. The fact that you are part of the problem. Every single person that uses the word race as a cultural determinant is part of the problem. You've just divided us. The only unifying word we have is race. And now we use it as if we were different races. When that word became, over 600 years ago, when that word became or started to be used by us as meaning difference between us, like one race to another race, okay? Destroyed humanity. Destroyed us. Because then we all had an ability, and the reason that they did it back 600 plus years ago was it was easier for us to kill one another that way. You didn't want to kill your own race. So we had to quickly change the word race and meaning other than just the human race. It also means races. Bullshit. And if we got nothing out of this program or nothing out of this whole thing we're doing right now in the last 30 minutes or 20 minutes that we've been sitting in this room, may you walk out of this room never using the word race as a cultural determinant again. Try it. It's so hard to change. And that's what we did at the UN. I said that at the UN, and the place went ballistic. They started cheering. Guess what they did? At the very first conference, the Durban Conference on Human Rights, that was held about a month after we did this one. Ours was on March 18th. In April of 2009, they changed the charter of the Durban Conference on Human Rights because of that one speech, that 4-minute little conversation we had. They changed it. Now we're waiting for them to change the charter of the United Nations and get rid of the word race as a divisionary word and make it a unifying word for the duration of the existence of us as human beings. But it's a real tough trip, man. You think it's hard? Little kids can do it in a second. When I go, that's why I speak at grammar schools and kindergartens. You tell them and they go, oh yeah, human race, yeah, okay. Don't use it as culture, okay. Easy. You'll walk out of this room and you'll still think that it's okay to use the word race as a cultural determinant, as a means of saying like one culture to another. One race with many cultures. And to tell you that the Irish and the English are the same culture, ha! Or the Guatemalan and the Ecuadorian are the same culture, You got to start from the very beginning and realize that, man, we're pretty different, all of us. It's like the Arapaho and the Navajo, the Cheyenne and the Cherokee. All First Nation people, but boy, they're different nations. Totally different nations. Try them, ask them. Ask the Aztec. Woo, they hated everybody.